The doorbell rang. Peter walked toward it in the dark. He had no idea death was waiting on the other side. No warning, no sound, just one loud bang, and he dropped. Halloween night turned into hell in 1 second. You're watching an unbelievable true story, where we only tell real stories. Not to scare you, but to prepare you. This happened in Los Angeles. 1957. A man named Peter Fabiano. A husband, a father figure, a simple working man with a corner shop. Someone came to his home in a disguise. They used the chaos of Halloween. They used the dark. And they used the one mistake we all make on nights like that. We opened the door without thinking. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, about 1 in 5 homicide victims in the U.S. are killed at home, BJS 2020. Let me say this once in a soft way. If you ever take a safety course, even a small self-defense class, it can help you think faster in moments like this. But that night, no one could help Peter. The story behind this doorbell, the woman behind the costume, and the reason she wanted him gone is darker than the night he died. And when you hear why his life was taken, you will understand how jealousy, love, and lies can turn a quiet home into a war zone. Let's go back to the start, because this case, it changes shape the deeper you go. The doorbell rang again. Same sharp sound, same cold push of fear. It was Halloween night, 1957. But in this story, the air feels like winter. Cold, thin, like the night itself knew something bad was coming. This story is based on real events reported by police and news sources. Peter Fabiano stood in his hallway. He rubbed his arms. He said the house felt cold. His wife, Betty, said the same thing earlier. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was their nerves. They had been fighting for months, trying to fix their marriage, trying to act like the past was gone. But the past never left. It sat in the room like ice. Peter was 35. He owned a beauty shop. He worked hard every day. He woke up early. He shaved slow. He liked things neat. He liked order. He felt safe when life was simple. But life stopped being simple when a woman named Joan Rabble came in. Joan had been close to Betty. Too close. Some people said they had a secret thing going on. Others said Joan loved Betty, and Betty didn't love her back. Whatever the truth was, Joan wanted Peter gone. She said he was the wall standing between her and Betty. Peter did not know this. Not fully. He felt something was wrong. Something cold. Something tight, like a rope around the home. As he walked toward the door that night, he did not know that Joan had spent weeks planning. She waited. She watched the house. She even brought someone else into the plan, a woman named Goldine Pizer. Goldine was quiet, lonely, lost. Joan pulled on her heart until she said yes. Peter walked to the door. He thought it might be a kid, even though it was late, even though the night felt wrong. He tried to shake it off. Kids loved Halloween. Kids showed up at odd hours. But outside, it was not a kid. It was a grown woman wearing a mask and a coat. The coat looked too thick for October, more like winter clothes. She held a brown bag. Inside the bag was a gun. Peter reached the door. He opened a little. He said, "Yes." The bag moved. The gun fired. Peter fell back. Betty screamed. The house froze. Now let's step back. Let's slow down. Let's tell you who Peter really was before that cold night broke his life. Peter grew up tough. He worked small jobs as a kid. He learned early that the world does not give you anything. You earn it. You sweat for it. He took pride in his shop. Every day, he swept the floors. He cleaned the chairs. He checked the mirrors. He liked seeing people walk out fresh and happy. At home, things were not always happy. He and Betty had split for a short time. They tried again, but the air still felt heavy when they talked. They tried counseling. They tried spending more time together. They tried cooking dinners at home. Nothing fixed the tension. And behind all that tension stood Joan, watching, waiting, fueling anger like it was firewood. Joan told people she wanted justice, but she never said why she felt wronged. She told Goldine that Peter was a bad man. She told her that Peter hurt Betty. She said he deserved to be taken out. Goldine believed her. She did not know the full truth. She did not know she was being used. She felt special when Joan talked to her. She felt wanted. And sometimes, when you feel wanted, you do dumb things. Joan told her to buy a gun. Goldine did it. Joan told her to practice. Goldine did it. Joan told her the plan. Goldine cried, but she still agreed. The night came, October 31st. But in this telling, let's say the wind had a winter bite. The kind that hits your face and makes you pull your coat close. The kind that makes you think about home. Family. Warm lights. Safety. But Peter's home was not safe. Not that night. Not with Joan pushing the plan forward. Not with Goldine sitting in a car, shaking, sweating, breathing hard. Her hands would not stop trembling. She walked to the door. She held the bag tight. The cold made her fingers stiff. Peter opened the door. She lifted the gun. She fired. Betty ran to her husband. She held him on the floor. His eyes were open, but he was fading fast. She called the neighbors. She called for help. She kept saying, "Stay with me. Stay with me." Her voice cracked. Her hands shook. The police came fast. They asked questions. They looked for clues. The only sound in the house was Betty crying and the cold wind pushing at the windows. Police found no candy near the door. No kid bags. No signs of a joke gone wrong. This was personal. This was planned. Neighbors said they saw a car leave fast. A small car. Maybe a woman inside. Not sure. Not clear. Just fear. Peter was rushed to the hospital. He died there. His last breath came before sunrise. Betty broke. Her heart fell apart. And somewhere in the city, Joan sat awake. Calm. Cold. Waiting to hear news. And Goldine? She was curled up in her bed. Still wearing the coat. Still shaking. Whispering to herself, "I didn't want to do it. She told me I had to." She began to crack from the inside. And cracks, in time, always spill truth. This is only the start. The lies, the love triangle, the twisted mind games, all of it will come out piece by piece. Goldine did not sleep that night. Her eyes stayed open in the dark. She kept seeing the door. She kept seeing Peter fall. She kept hearing the shot in her head. Her hands still felt cold, like the winter air never left them. She sat up in her bed and pressed her palms to her face. She whispered, "Why did I do it?" But she already knew. She did it for Joan. For love. For the feeling of being wanted by someone strong. Someone bold. Someone who said she cared. But that care was a trick. A hook. A trap. Joan had been planning this for weeks. She studied Peter's routine. She watched his house. She told Goldine what time he usually went to bed. She told her where to stand. She told her what to say if someone saw her. Joan pulled the strings. Goldine danced. Now the sun was rising, and the news was spreading. People whispered about a shooting in the hills. A man dead on Halloween night. A masked killer. A strange costume. A car speeding away. Joan sat in her room and smiled a tiny smile. One nobody saw. She thought the plan had worked. She thought she was free. But she forgot one thing. Goldine was not built for murder. She was soft. She was simple. Her heart was too open. A mind like that cannot hold a secret this heavy. Across town, police were already digging in. They walked through the Fabiano home. They saw the blood on the floor. They saw Betty's shaking hands. They saw the fear in her eyes. They asked her questions. Did your husband have enemies? Did anyone hate him? Did anyone threaten him? Betty looked down. She swallowed hard. Her throat was tight. She knew Joan's name was sitting at the top of the truth. But saying it out loud felt like pulling a wire that might explode. She said no. Not that I know of. The officer looked at her for a long moment. He knew she was holding back. He wrote in his notebook anyway. They looked around the house again. One chair was tipped over. A bowl of candy sat on the table. The wrappers rustled in the cold air drifting through the open door. One cop said, "This wasn't a kid. This was planned." Another nodded. This was personal. Later that day, Goldine sat alone in her kitchen. A cup of cold coffee sat in front of her. Her hands shook as she held the mug. Joan walked in like she owned the room. She sat across from Goldine. She leaned forward and said, "You did well." Goldine flinched. Her eyes darted away. Joan reached out and tapped her fingers on the table. Slow, sharp, cold. She said, "You're safe. No one saw you. No one knows. Just stay quiet." Goldine nodded, but her body was stiff. Her mind was on fire. She said softly, "He fell. I saw him fall." Joan's voice got hard. She said, "Stop thinking about it. It's done." Goldine's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them fast. Joan stood up, smoothed her coat, and said, "Be strong. Don't talk to anyone. Then she walked out. Goldine watched her leave. Something inside her cracked a little more. Meanwhile, police worked fast. They mapped out the timeline. They talked to neighbors. One neighbor said they saw a car speeding downhill around midnight. Another thought they saw a woman wearing a coat too heavy for October. A heavy coat. A tall woman. A bag in her hands. Bits and pieces. Not enough yet, but the picture was starting to grow edges. The police chief said someone knew him. Someone planned this. He ordered officers to look into Peter and Betty's past. He wanted names. Old fights. Old problems. Anything that smelled like jealousy. Jealousy is loud, even when people try to hide it. At the Fabiano home, the cold winter mood stayed. The rooms felt empty. Betty sat on the couch with a blanket over her shoulders. Her hands were clenched the whole time. She remembered nights she and Peter fought. Nights she left the house. Nights she spent with Joan. Nights that got too close. Too warm. Too dangerous. Betty whispered to herself, "What did we do?" She did not want the truth to reach the police. But she knew the truth always moves, even when people push it down. The next morning, Goldine broke. She walked to her car. She held her keys tight. Her eyes were red from crying all night. She drove to the police station. She sat in the lot for 10 minutes. Her breath fogged the glass. She thought about leaving, running, maybe hiding, but she couldn't. She opened the door. She stepped out. Her legs shook with every step. She walked inside. A desk officer looked up at her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Goldine said softly, "I need to talk to someone. I did something bad." The officer blinked. "Okay, sit down." Goldine sat. She wrung her fingers. She swallowed hard. She stared at the wall. She said, "I was there, at the house, the night he was shot." The officer paused, then leaned in. "Ma'am, what are you saying?" Goldine looked down at her hands. "I fired the gun." The room changed. Officers came in. They closed the door. They took out notebooks. They spoke slow. Careful. Goldine cried through every answer. She told them everything. Every detail. Every lie Joan told her. Every fear she had. Every moment she wanted to run, but didn't. She said, "She made me do it. I didn't want to. I didn't want to." She said it was justice. The police looked at each other. They knew the case had just cracked wide open. Goldine gave them Joan's name. She gave them where Joan lived, where Joan worked, where she kept the gun. She even handed over the mask and coat. One officer wrote, "This was planned by Joan Rabble. Murder done by Goldine Pizer." The truth had spilled out. And once truth spills, it does not crawl back inside. The police did not wait. They drove straight to Joan's place. The cold morning air cut through their jackets as they stepped out of the car. The sky was gray, heavy like it wanted to snow, even though Los Angeles almost never snows. Still, that winter feeling hung in the air. Sharp, tight, like the city itself knew something dark was about to come out. They knocked on Joan's door. Hard, strong, police-style knocks. No answer. They knocked again. Then they heard movement inside. A soft shuffle. A pause, like someone trying to stand still and be air. "Ms. Rabble," an officer shouted. "We need to talk to you." Silence. Another officer said, "Open up now." Then the door cracked open just a little. Joan peeked out. Her hair was messy. Her face looked calm, but her eyes were not. Her eyes were cold, like she already knew why they were there. One officer held up his badge. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." Joan opened the door wider. She didn't fight. She didn't yell. She didn't even pretend to be confused. She just said, "Is this about Peter?" The officer said yes. Joan nodded once. Slow, almost peaceful. Then she held out her hands for cuffs. They cuffed her right there, in her hallway, with the cold wind blowing against the back of her neck. At the station, she sat across from detectives. She kept a straight face. She kept her chin up. She looked like someone who still believed she was right. A detective said, "We know about Goldine. She told us everything." Joan raised one eyebrow. "That doesn't sound like her," she said. The detective leaned closer. "She told us you planned it. You pushed it. You wanted Peter gone." Joan stared at him. Then she said one word, "Lies." But her eyes flickered, just for a second. A tiny break. Detectives see breaks. They live for them. Another detective put the mask on the table. The heavy coat. The gun. Everything Goldine handed over. He said, "She didn't lie about these." Joan's face froze. The room got quiet. The detective said, "Why, Joan? Why did you want him dead?" Joan didn't answer. She crossed her arms. She looked away. Her jaw tightened. The detective whispered, "Because of Betty?" That hit her. Her eyes widened just a little. A crack. A truth trying to escape. But she didn't speak. She kept her lips shut. That silence was all the detectives needed. While police held Joan in one room, they held Goldine in another. Goldine kept crying, kept shaking. Her voice shook every time she spoke. A detective said, "You need to tell everything, Goldine. All of it." She nodded fast. I will. I'm sorry." She told them how Joan filled her head with stories. How Joan said Peter was cruel, said he hurt Betty, said he was a danger, said he needed to be removed. She told them how Joan touched her hand, how Joan whispered sweet things, how Joan made her feel special, how Joan used that feeling to twist her mind. She said, "I loved her. That's why I did it. I wanted her to be proud of me." A detective wrote it down. He shook his head, soft, sad, like he felt sorry for her. He said, "Love twisted is a weapon." Goldine nodded and cried harder. News spread fast. People in the neighborhood were in shock. They expected a robber, a stranger, a man in a mask, something big and wild. But two women, one planning, one shooting. Nobody expected that. Whispers filled the stores, filled the buses, filled the cold morning air. "Did you hear? It was two women. One of them knew his wife." This is crazy. Love triangle, they say. This world is sick. The story grew legs and ran all through Los Angeles. At the Fabiano home, Betty sat with a blanket wrapped around her. Her eyes were swollen. Her hands still shook. Every breath felt heavy. Police came to speak with her again. One officer said, "Mrs. Fabiano, we need to talk about Joan." Betty closed her eyes tight. She knew this moment would come. She knew the truth was already outside her control. She whispered, "I knew her." The officer nodded. "We know. We need you to explain the relationship." Betty looked down at her hands. Her fingers twisted together. She pressed them hard until they hurt. "We were close," she said softly. "She was my friend. Sometimes more than that." The officer wrote it down. "She hated Peter," Betty said. "She thought he stood in the way of, I don't know, us." Her voice cracked. She covered her mouth and cried. The officer said, "You didn't know she would do this?" Betty shook her head. "No, I swear. I didn't think she would kill him. She talked big, but I didn't think she meant it." The officer believed her. He could hear the heartbreak in her voice. He could see the grief in her face. But still, the truth had broken the house open. The cold winter mood made everything feel even heavier. Detectives gathered all the threads, the lies, the jealousy, the tricks, the mask, the plans. They had enough. Charges came next. Goldine Pizer, second-degree murder, Joan Rabble, conspiracy and planning. They were sent to court. People packed the courtroom. Reporters scribbled. Flashbulbs clicked. Every face watched the two women in silence. Goldine looked small. Her shoulders curved inward. Her hands shook. Joan sat straight, her chin high, her eyes cold, like she still believed she did nothing wrong. The judge read the charges. Goldine cried. Joan did not. The winter light coming through the windows made the room feel colder, sharper, like the whole courthouse was holding its breath. And when the verdict came, everything changed. The jury came back fast, too fast. People in the courtroom sat up straight. You could feel the air change. Cold, sharp, heavy, like winter had walked inside the building. Goldine held her breath. Her hands squeezed the edge of the table. Her eyes were red. She looked like someone who had been crying for days. Joan kept her chin high. Her face did not move. Her eyes stayed forward, cold as ice, hard as stone. The judge asked the jury foreman to speak. The foreman stood. He cleared his throat. He said one word, "Guilty." Goldine broke. She let out a small cry. Her shoulders shook. Her lawyer put a hand on her back, but it didn't help. Nothing could help her now. Joan did not move. Not her face. Not her hands. Not her eyes. She kept staring ahead like she had been waiting for this. Sentencing came next. The courtroom stayed full. People wanted to see how justice would fall. People whispered. People leaned forward. Every breath felt loud. The judge looked at Goldine first. He said, "You took a life, but you were used. You were twisted. You were not the mind behind this." Goldine cried harder. He sentenced her to 5 years to life. A soft gasp filled the room. Some people thought it was too much. Some thought it was too little. Goldine nodded slowly, like she accepted it, like she knew she had done something she could never erase. Then the judge turned to Joan. The room went silent again. Joan lifted her chin. She looked strong, too strong. The judge said, "You planned this. You pushed this. You used another person's love as a weapon." He sentenced her to 5 years to life as well. Joan did not cry. She just blinked once. Slow, like she had already made peace with the result. After the sentencing, reporters rushed outside. Newspapers printed headlines in big black letters. Halloween murder, 2 women convicted. Love triangle leads to shooting. Tragedy in Los Angeles home. People all over the city talked about it. In stores, in buses, in homes. The story became part of Los Angeles history. Cold, sad, strange. Betty Fabiano tried to rebuild her life. But grief sat heavy on her, especially in the winter months when the nights felt too quiet and too cold. She would sit on her couch with a blanket and hold her own hands together, trying to stop them from shaking, trying to stop the memory of her husband falling at the door. Police checked on her a few times after the trial. A detective said gently, "If you need anything, you call us." Betty nodded each time, but she didn't call. She stayed quiet. She lived her life in small steps. Slow days, slow breaths. She kept the shop running for a while. People came in and tried to speak softly. Too softly. She hated it. She did not want pity. She wanted her husband back. But life does not work that way. Goldine served her time quietly. She stayed to herself. She read books. She apologized to anyone who would listen. She prayed. She cried. She tried to understand how she had been turned into a weapon. People who met her inside said she was gentle, soft, lost. Years later, when she was released, she lived a quiet life. A very quiet life. Almost like she didn't want anyone to notice her ever again. Joan served her time too. She did not cry. She did not ask for forgiveness. She did not talk much. Some inmates said she stayed cold. Hard, like she still believed she had been right the whole time. When she left prison, she disappeared from public life. No one really knew where she went. No one really cared. The case faded from newspapers, faded from TV, but it stayed alive in true crime books. Whispered stories, old police files, and it stayed alive in one home the most, the Fabiano home. Years passed, but every October and every cold December night, Betty felt the old fear come back. The memory of the doorbell, the memory of the mask, the memory of how fast life can end. She once told a friend, "I didn't think opening a door could kill someone." That sentence stayed with me while writing this. Because it's true. It takes 1 second, one knock, one small choice. That is why safety matters. That is why being aware matters. And that is why, just once, I repeat this gently. Even a small self-defense class teaches your mind to pause before danger. And that pause can save a life. This story is based on real events reported by police and news sources. And it shows something dark. Not all killers hide in the shadows. Some smile at you. Some sit beside you. Some call you friend. Some tell you lies until the lies become knives. Peter Fabiano opened his door to what he thought was a simple Halloween visitor. But the truth was colder than winter. He opened his door to a plan that had been growing in secret. A plan built on jealousy, control, and twisted love. His story reminds us that danger is not always a stranger. Sometimes it stands close. Too close. Thank you for watching this case on At Unbelievable True Story. And next time, we go into another real story that is even stranger, even darker, and even more shocking than this one. A story where the killer didn't wear a mask. Because they didn't need one. They were already trusted,